Late to the party on this one. Fuck it, you're getting my thoughts anyway. Final Fantasy XIV is not too hard. Well, that's the end of the video. Like and subscribe, hope y'all enjoyed. No, you're not getting off that easily. Roll the intro. So difficulty in Final Fantasy XIV is the subject of a few posts, videos, arguments, stone tablet carvings, etc. that I've been seeing over the course of the last couple of weeks. A lot of the topics are arguing about whether the current Dawntrail normal content is too difficult for the average Final Fantasy XIV player to complete, especially the normal raid tier and the expert dungeons. I think the spike in difficulty was some time coming, especially because there's people who don't do Savage or Ultimate content but who still want to be challenged, and there's people who are below average skill level who still want to play and be taken seriously. I don't think it's a problem to be below average. Some people just don't play this one game as much, or they play it for the millions of hours of other mechanics that you can interact with in a game like FF14, which is deeper than the fucking Marianas Trench. For me, there's only one question at the core of this. How many times are you okay dying while doing content? During my relatively recent run through the first few expansions, I rarely, if ever, did content where I distinctly remember wiping multiple times to mechanics unless somebody in the party was drastically undergeared or the healer or tank was drastically underskilled. As someone who at time of writing spent about 12 hours over the last couple of days being brutally beaten to a pulp by Honeybee Lovely, I'm perfectly fine dying 100 times before clearing a fight, but I understand that not everyone is like me. The parties I was in wiped at least once per fight while doing the normal raids blind, and we wiped at least once the first time we did every expert dungeon, and it did take me a couple of weekends of Party Finder with a few friends to clear both the extreme trials, and even so, we were able to pull people from my free company who had never done high-level content, but who were able to help with the extremes, and even cleared M1S with somebody who had never done Savage fights before. I feel like a lot of people are averse to making mistakes and wiping at all. Going through and dying every so often is a part of the game. It's a part of life even. You're occasionally going to get blindsided by an animation you don't recognize, and the way to get through that annoyance is to pick yourself up and try again now that you have a better idea of what's coming. It's not a moral failing to die every so often. Yeah, put that on a fucking t-shirt. If you've been able to get through 6 expansions worth of content to get to the normal raids in Dawntrail, and you haven't figured out that you're occasionally just going to die once or twice to some content, then I feel like you need to manage expectations. First piece of content that I remember really making me feel this was the Near Alliance raids from Shadowbringers. Even when we did them the first time, we wiped 4 or 5 times on each one. This is normal level content, and it's tuned a little bit harder than the rest of the content. The Eden raids didn't kill us that much, nothing before even came close. I think a lot of this is also coming from a slice of the community that wants difficulty in other ways. I think it was a Xeno video I saw where he was talking about how there's a balancing act for difficulty, and this is tied in with job difficulty and job identity as well as straight content difficulty. He makes the point that the more difficult the individual jobs are to play, the less room the game has to make actual fights harder, not only for balancing reasons but for accessibility. If you're playing like Monk or Dark Knight or Black Mage and performing cold fusion every 30 seconds with your rotation spreadsheet that needed time on a NASA supercomputer to optimize, then sure, the fights can only be so hard as in, out, spread, stack, pairs, light parties, whatever. However, the inverse is also true. The more streamlined and consistent jobs are, the more they can make the difficulty in the actual execution of the fight. I think the Valor-Gramanda extreme might just be my favorite fight in the entire game, for the way it tests your execution and the mechanics. It's a ton of fun, it's a massive spectacle, and it throws a ton of mechanics at you. From the perspective of a Scholar player, a lot of what I enjoyed from the extreme was a test of good mitigation plan, having to position myself in slidecast or use Roman 2 effectively, and the sheer variety of attacks that it had. One of my favorite moments in this fight is this moment here after the fire phase where Valor-Gramanda smashes the arena and lands on the platform a little. This animation feels like a statement from the designers that this extreme is different. We are breaking down the boundaries we previously set for ourselves, and we expect our players to do the same. I had this thought also during Holminster Switch, the first dungeon in Shadowbringers. It felt like a massive step up from even the last Stormblood dungeon, which I can't even remember the name of off the top of my head. It's apparently Gimlet Dark, but that shows how much of an impression it had on me, I guess. I used to joke with my FC that imagine somebody showing up to the game, buying a skip to Shadowbringers and a level skip, and the first dungeon they run into is Holminster Switch. Or even now, imagine somebody buying a skip and running headfirst into Tower of Zot. That dungeon is bound to make you wake the fuck up and pay attention. The final trash pull and the final boss of that dungeon is nuts even by the standards set by Dawntrail. There's nothing in Dawntrail as chaotic as the last boss of Tower of Zot. Where does this leave us? Well, I'd love to be able to tie everything up in a nice neat little bundle and leave it on YouTube and Twitter and Reddit for everyone to see and react to and be mad about, but unfortunately one Scarlet Bunny isn't going to solve everything. I'm not going to be Charlie Campion to a revolution in the hearts and minds of the Final Fantasy XIV player base. I can't solve everything, even with the most robust and convincing chain letter. They don't work after all. Again, I think the solution is just a mindset change. I'm sorry you're gonna wipe a couple more times while doing the normal level content. I don't think that's a problem, but you're allowed to disagree. Anyway, I'm gonna go back to making the crafted gear for everyone in my FC and talking way too fast over way too little B-roll.